Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Welcome. You're joining us for learning the ins and out of cash flow management. This session is recorded. We will be sending out a copy of the recording and slide deck to all attendees within 2 to 3 business days after this webinar. We do encourage you to post any questions that you may have in the chat. Just a brief introduction about the Temple SBDC. The Temple SBDC helps small businesses start, grow, and succeed. We do this through our no-cost funding. That way we can provide webinars and training programs like you're attending today. You're joining us for learning the ins and out of cash flow management with our presenter, Jonathan Schuyler. If you do have any questions, again, please post them in the Q&A or chat box. Now I'll turn over the floor to Jonathan.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Taya, and thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to work with all of you and really proud of all of you here today for taking the time to invest in yourself and in your business. I'm a business community officer at Bank of America, so I have two jobs, one to help you with access to capital and two, expertise and resources. So would love just to make this interactive. I will pause throughout to answer questions and use real life examples as we're going to go through the ins and outs of cash flow management, one of my favorite. But first, in the chat and Q&A, you should hopefully be able to write comments. Before I start, would love for you to tell me what business you're in. So I don't know, Taya, if we need to do a poll, but would love for our participants to write what business they're in or looking to start. I'll give you a minute. Again, for those just joining, what industry are you in? And then we will jump into cash flow management.
All right, thank you everyone for participating in the poll. We have a lot of we have hospitality, coffee, photography, real estate investing, arts, and notary businesses.
Okay. Notaries, coffee, hospitality. Perfect. Thank you all for answering that. And I will share my screen and get us started because this will allow me to use real world and real life examples. All right. All right. So again, I'm Jonathan Sklar, our business community officer. Now, every year, Bank of America does a study where we survey over 1,000 different business owners all over the country. And from that, we produce different findings that are available online. However, I'm going to share a really good one for today, which is as of 2024, we surveyed business owners like you, over 7 out of 10, 70% said they're looking to obtain funding over the next 12 months. So when we think about access to capital and how you're managing your capital and cash flow, this is top of mind to business owners like yourself. So huge, huge statistic. And 40% of business owners are reevaluating their cash flow due to impacts with inflation. So getting paid and getting paid timely is so important.
Jonathan, could you share in presenter mode?
Sure. I have it says I'm screen sharing. Is it not in? Oh, it's on this one. Let me change that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Is that any better?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So again, 7 out of 10 are looking to obtain funding and 40% are reevaluating their cash flow. So today we're going to discuss a few different topics. What is cash flow, the impacts to you, positive and negative, and different steps to create a cash flow budget. Throughout, I'm going to do my best to make it interactive, open it up to questions. Taya is awesome, so she sees questions in the chat. She'll let me know as well. So feel free to blow up the chat with any questions and thoughts as we go through. And at the end, I will also share some free resources that we do at Bank of America such as our Cornell Women's Entrepreneurship Program and many, many more. So let's jump in. So what is cash flow, right? Many of us think about, all right, what's money that comes in, right, and goes out? But it's so much more than that. So when we think of a business, when I used to be a small business banker in New York for several years, and you can have the best business in the world and it's generating a lot of money, but if you're not receiving that money, if it's not coming in, you're going to have cash flow constraints. For an example, I had somebody who is a wholesaler. He bought a lot of clothes from India and would sell it throughout Times Square. He had a ton of people ordering from him. So he had to first pay around roughly 3 months in advance to get the clothes from India. He then customized it, and then he had to wait to sell it. Well, because it took him roughly 3 months to get the clothes, another month to sell the clothes, and sometimes the people who bought for him, they weren't all people who walk in. Their businesses themselves, they would have terms of another 30 to 45 days. This gentleman had roughly 6 months he had to wait for getting paid. And he looked at a few different tools to help him better his cash flow, but had he not been helped and given the proper advice and guidance, his business would have gone under despite the demand because he had to pay so much in the beginning. So that amounts to cash conversion cycle. It's the amount it takes to convert investments in inventory into cash from the sale of it. So in this gentleman's example, right, it took him 6 months. Whereas, and I know someone said they're in a coffee industry, if someone's buying coffee from you, they walk in the door, you're getting paid right away. Now, of course, in the coffee, you have to buy the coffee, you have to make it put together, but when they come in the door and they buy that item from you, they're paying you immediately. Same in restaurants. But other industries, that gap can be longer. So maintaining a healthy cash flow, make sure you have cash now for today and in the long term. So that's so important. And again, oftentimes you'll have inventory, then you'll have accounts receivable, money that you're receiving, but you also have to pay out as well. So as a business owner, and it's going to sound selfish, but it's the best way to run business, you want to get money as quick as you can. If you can speed that baby up, you're in business. And you want to take as much time as possible before you pay out that money. So the longer you can keep that money and convert it to cash, the more you can use it for something else. But if you have to pay something right away, that's going to hurt you. And we're going to talk later in this presentation about more tools and tips and tricks and insider secrets from the bank to help you get that money quicker and hold your hard-earned cash as long as possible without paying any interest to help better your cash flow. So now we're going to talk about positive cash flow. And after I go to the next slide, I'll pause and open up to any questions. So we all love positive cash flow. I don't know if there's emojis on here, Taya, but if so, we'd love to see like smiling thumbs up, right? We love making money, and we want our business to make more money than it spends. So in a strong business, cash flow improves over time, giving you more money that you can use to invest in your employees, buy more equipment, buy your real estate, explore and expand. However, and I think you all know what's coming, negative cash flow is when your business spends more money than it's earning. And that happens a lot of times, especially in seasonal industries. So if you think about people in, let's say, the gardening industry, landscaping, how many of you are doing a lot of landscaping right now in the winter? Right? Anybody? You're all not. I can see you guys in my head shaking your head. No, I'm not. Right? No, most of us are not. But in the summer, you're very busy. And the same thing, if you're an ice cream shop, you're making a lot in the summer, less in the winter. But in the winter, other businesses might be doing well. You know, you might be buying like hot cocoa and coffees and different things. So those things matter when we're looking at cash flow. Now, I said a lot. I'll pause and see if there's any questions in the chat or anything that anyone wants to bring up. Give you 30 seconds. And then Taya, keep me honest, and then I'll go to the next page. All right,
All
we're
right,
good
no
so far.
questions at this time.
All right, we'll continue. So how do you manage cash flow? Now, many banks you may bank with, we have actually a tool that does cash flow management. So imagine you're running your business, and how great would it be if I said, hey, January and February, you would know how much money you could make. Not a crystal ball, this is real life. We have cash flow tools, and many larger banks have this as well, and institutions where we can actually see the cash flow monitor we have, where you can see based on your projected and what invoices you have, you can actually see how the following month is going to look. Think about that, knowing what January and February is going to look like before it happens. Imagine what you could do for your notary business or healthcare business. You might be able to hire somebody else, or you might be able to expand or buy more equipment. So managing cash flow and having a proper budget to know what comes in and goes out takes your business to the next level. You're no longer hoping that you make rent for December. You're focusing ahead, and that lets you track. And I'll have an example I'm going to share with you shortly. And there's different reportings that lets you track using operating budget, overhead, labor, production, and it lets you make projections to understand where is your money going and what can you potentially do to optimize it. So if you're not using it, I recommend to all of you to do it, because this way you're working on the business, not just in the business. I'll say it again, on the business, not just in. So rather than you're so focused on the day-to-day, you can take that step back and look what's going to happen 2, 3, 4, 5 months from now. So we'll go over some tools and tips and tricks to help you do that. But if you don't do it, most of your banks or bankers, talk to them. They can kind of help you with that software, and it's often included for banking. So what are some ways to improve your cash flow? Well, one is inventory management. So, I often see a lot of business owners are overbuying. They're buying too much raw material. So, if I'm that coffee company, I don't want to, and I know people aren't buying as much hazelnut coffee, which I love. You may want to order less of that. But sometimes it's tough to know when you're doing so much. So keeping track of that and ordering the proper amount of inventory is really going to help you, not just from a cost perspective, but a space perspective, so you can make sure you're able to run efficiency. So the proper record keeping and knowing where you are will enable you to have a better sense of what products or services are you selling more of, are you not moving as quickly, and this will enable you to focus on what's doing really well and let go of those products or buy less of those products. You're not overbuying, which takes up your much deserved hard-earned money and space. The next piece is collecting receivables. So receivable means money coming in, the money that you're getting, money that you are receiving. So as a business owner, again, you want to receive as quick as possible. So we have a tool at Bank of America, and I'm sure many of you might have some at yours, that you can actually, it's called Vertical IQ, where you can see the industry benchmarks, meaning you can see what other people in your industry are doing and what the averages are. So if I am a notary service or I am in real estate, I might want to know how many employees on average those companies have, or how long it takes them to get paid, or what their margins are. There are tools that we have and many institutions have to see how quick or what their timeline is for getting paid. Because you might be giving your supplier or customers 60 days to pay you, where the industry average might be only 25 or 30. So a big thing here is establishing a net 30 schedule with customers, meaning you get paid within 30 days. Every industry is different. So if you're in the coffee business, you buy it, you get it right away. But other ones like wholesale, it might take longer. But making sure that you're able to get paid quickly, as well as potentially giving discounts to those who pay you quicker, can help the business. Often I'll see a 1 or 2% discount if someone pays quicker. So I had a client that was like, well, why do I want to lose 2% and give that away. Well, imagine if you're waiting to get a $200,000 order and you're waiting for 2 months, imagine all the things you can do with that money if you got it 2 weeks from now versus 2 months from now. So a small cost can enable you to put that money to work, find more capital, hire another employee. So the quicker you get paid, the better. And then the last piece there is accepting credit cards, mobile payments, electronic payments. I'm sure most of you don't want to be depositing checks or having your money on hold. So, cash is king. The quicker you can convert to cash, the better. And if you are able to accept credit cards or online, it's the same as quick as same day that you get paid. So let me see. I did see a question in the chat, which I'll answer right when I finish this. And I love seeing it. So feel free to blow up the chat to make sure I answer that. All right. So again, you want to get paid quick, and vice versa. You want to hold your money. You got to hold that baby, right? You don't want to pay it out right away, which we'll get into. So the other piece is managing it wisely. We spoke a little bit about merchant service, meaning it allows you to get paid via credit and debit cards. Fun fact, on average, people, myself included, especially my wife, we will spend more on credit cards than cash. If I walk to a store with $50 and a $50 bill, the most I can spend is $50. But if I say I'm only going to spend $50 and I go to Target and I see something that's $49 and I see something else that, it's $8, I might buy it and I'm spending over that $50. So as the merchant, the more ways you can get paid, the better. And the other piece is make sure you have enough cash on hand to cover roughly 3 months of expenses. If you're not there yet, that's okay. Start saving, because anything over that amount, I've had a client when I was in New York, he had $550,000 in cash, and he only roughly used $50,000 a month. So he had 10 months worth. And when we spoke about ways he could invest it or put it in a high yield savings account, earning 4%, that money would be roughly $20,000 in interest. He just never thought of it that way, even though there was no risk to it. So, right, making sure you have enough cash, but you don't want to sit overly in cash. There's different investment options, savings options that you can use. And then asking yourself, how does every dollar benefit my business? What's the return on investment there? So, right, making sure you have enough cash and putting that money to work. That way, you can hire more people, buy more inventory. You guys work on your business, right, to take it to the next level. Maybe the other person can do a lot of your duties. That frees you up to do what you love. And then lastly, almost the opposite of receiving receivables, payables. So you want to make sure that if able, you're able to wait as long as possible to pay without getting interest. So for example, I used to use a debit card on everything, and debit cards are fine, but when you buy something, say it's $500, it's out of your account like that. Boom. Credit card, you have 30 to 45 days where you're not being charged a penny in interest, as long as you pay your statement in full on time each month. So if you have a credit card, you're usually able to get cash back. There's cards that give 1%, even 2% cash back. And if you're spending tens of thousands a month on your business, that can be thousands of dollars in your pocket. And 2, it's not leaving your account right away. You're giving yourself an extra month before you pay that bill, right? And then prioritizing it. So I always say don't pay a penny in interest, pay it on time, but looking through what's owed and making sure to look at what the interest rates are for each tool and product. So there's credit cards, lines of credit, and then talking to your vendors. Maybe they can give you the 30 or 60 days before you have to pay them, and that gives you more time to pay their rent, buy more supplies. So just to summarize, you want to receive your money as quick as possible, whether it's merchant, getting wires, establishing schedules and discounts, and you want to wait as long as you're able to pay off for cash flow. All right, Sandra, I see a question, so thank you. If I'd rather work in my business versus on my business and could afford to outsource inventory management and cash flow management, what professional would that be? Sandra, feel free to put in the chat what business you're in so I can try to help with that. It's a great question. And that's one of the biggest things I see with businesses that are continuing to grow is you're doing a lot. You're wearing multiple hats. You want to focus on what you're great at, which is running your business. Coffee stand. Okay. So a few things, depending on, how large you are, and we can set up time after to really speak more granularly about it. But if you're selling coffee, you actually have the tools that you can plug in when they're paying for it with your merchant service system. You can actually start seeing what's being used and bought the most. And you can also start talking to those vendors. A lot of the people you sell to, people don't really think about it. You may be able to get special terms, especially if you're buying in bulk. So if you're buying a bunch of hazelnut coffee, using that as an example, you might be able to say, hey, look, I'm buying, pounds and pounds of it every single day. I'd love to buy even more in bulk, but what terms can we set up? And oftentimes, especially with coffee wholesalers, you're able to set up 30 to 45 day terms. Now, everything's different. The scale, the size all looks different, but that gives you more time to pay things. And using your merchant service provider, if you're paying for it, they can actually input. And if you're using bank software, you can actually start to see there's a tool that is a cash flow monitor to start seeing how every month looks and what your future months are going to look like. So after this, I'll share my QR code after this speak went off. Fantastic question. Awesome. Feel free to reach out to anybody else. All right, before I go into the next steps, feel free to jump in if any questions. Want to keep it interactive. All right, Sandra, great question. Again, I'll be looking out for more. So there's different steps to creating a cash flow budget. I'm not going to read through it because I'm actually going to show you and share some really cool examples with all of you. There's a lot on this page. Don't worry, we're going to talk through it, okay? Again, you don't have to know all this, but this is something that if used effectively and appropriately, can help you take it to the next level. And then I see a question in chat, what's the best way to manage cash flow if our dollars are sporadic or not consistent, right? Or great question, great question. Says, would like to answer this live. Yeah, so this is actually what we're going to talk about in this example. So we're going to go through a bakery that is getting some funds and that number is changing. And to answer your question as well, and we'll get into it, we see if there's uneven cash flow, or we call it seasonality, that's when a larger business, anyone in business roughly 2 years or more, you want to start thinking about a line of credit. Why? If you don't use it, you don't pay anything. And it's very important because if you know, and this is where this cash flow budgeting example is important, you can start building out to see what your gap is going to look like. So if you know, hey, I get really slow in January and February, well, you don't want to finance that money always out of pocket because you can use that for your business. You don't always want to use a business credit card, especially if you don't think you'll pay it within a month. So that's where a line of credit comes in. And what's great about that, you don't use it, you don't pay it. And then when you are using it, the rates are about half, if not less, than a credit card. And that'll enable you to either, pay for inventory, pay for supplies while you're waiting to get that money back. So a line of credit, depending on what you're looking to do, is a fantastic way to have it and to use sporadic or inconsistent amounts. If you're not using it, you're not paying it, when you need it, it is there for you. All right, I'm going to keep going, and then I'll check the Q&A. Great question so far. I love it. So we're going to use a bakery example, okay? Let me pull this up. Step one is find the right tool. We have a tool in-house, Bank of America. Your bank might have something, or your banker. We have what's called a cash flow monitor. It's our cash flow forecasting tool that I was referencing, where you can use it to start seeing what your future looks like. So we're going to use a bakery, okay? This bakery started in January, and they just started. So if you just start, how much money do you have when you start? You usually have zero. You have nothing. So in this example, we have the cash flow tool, we're finding the right tool, and then what are we doing? We're figuring out the time that we want to, project out. In this case, 6 months. Okay, so it'll look like more 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's because we're looking through May and we're going to forecast through the other 2 months. So step 2 is find what your time frame is. It might be 3 months, 6 months, a year. I usually see, but that's important. So in this example, the business just started. They're not making anything, but they know they signed a lease that's $10,000 a month. So in January it's $10,000, February, every month it's the same. So think of it for you all, your coffee shop, your notary, your health thing, whatever expenses, whether it's rent, payroll, whatever that's consistent, you can start thinking of money going out. In this case, the bakery, they spent roughly $12,000 on their goods to make muffins and cookies and cakes. And this is actually taken from a real client, by the way. So they spent $10,000 on their monthly expenses and $12,000 for their product. So they actually spent $22,000. They didn't earn anything that month. Okay. Knowing that, February, they realized as they're writing this in, they made $20,000. So they made $20,000, so they still have the $10,000 monthly and $12,000 in cost of goods. So 10 plus 12 is 22 minus 20. They still were short 2,000. And I'm going to go through and show you step by step. So first step, find the budget or the tool that works for you. Step 2, figure out your time horizon. 6 months. I recommend if you've been in business, use roughly 6 months to a year. 3, prepare a sales forecast. What amount do you foresee going into your account based on prior months or years you've been in business? If you haven't started your business yet, it's a little tougher to do because you want a couple months to go by. Or prepare that based on what you've been seeing the past couple months. Step 4, you can start projecting the cash inflow. So as we go through the examples, they're seeing what they did in April and May, right? They didn't know exactly what was going on in July, but because they've been doing this for 6 months from starting, they knew, well, their monthly expense was the same, but they were doing more business. You can see their monthly went from 20 to 30 to 45,000, and that was pretty consistent, April and May. So they assumed in July it would be the same. Okay, it might go up, it might go down, but again, this is not going to be a perfect science. It's a monitor, it's a forecasting tool. So they know, hey, if we're going to make $45,000, we know based on our monthly expense and what it costs us, it'll cost us roughly $30,000. They can know what their ending cash on hand is. So how powerful is that to be able to look in the future and say, I know I'm going to be profitable. I can start planning ahead. So I'll finish this example, and it should make more sense. So we look at the money going in minus the money going out. Calculate the end cash balance. So in this case, 45 minus 37 is 8. And then you're able to set a minimum cash flow balance, what your goal is. And you can start to see this business, real business, is getting profitable. You don't have to do all this. There's tools available to you, but this is just one really good example for how you can help monitor your business. All right, I see a bunch of questions in the chat. I will open it until Taya yells at me. So does Bank of America give out line of credit to non-B of A customers? Every bank is different. Most banks like to see that you bank with them. We want to see at least Bank of America, at least 2 years in business typically. Now, we do have a resource. I call it the matchmaker. It's really cool where there's about 10 questions, and we partner with 150 different institutions, and you put in how long in business, what your sales are, how much you're looking for, and they're able to actually match you up with other banks or institutions that might be able to help you. Even if you have a few years in business or lower credit, they can look at it. But typically, Huma, and great question, the first question the banker would ask is, why isn't your bank doing it? And sometimes they don't, and that's okay. But we like to see a relationship there. But that being said, still definitely connect with a banker. And at the end, I can share that matchmaker link. It's called the Access to Capital Connector, and that's free to use. Jessica wrote, I'm a year and 6 months into my business and doing better number-wise than last year, but still struggle with cash flow. When am I eligible to apply? So typically, every bank is different. We want to see 2 years in business, and by 2 years of tax returns, and you want to see sales over $100,000 typically. Now, for anybody, whether you bank with us or not, you can all get a business credit card, even with Bank of America, even if you don't bank. I recommend, whether it's your bank, Chase, Capital One, PNC, wherever, get a business credit card, because that'll start helping you build your credit. And why is that important? I had a client who wanted to buy a real estate. So they wanted to buy their own office space in Brooklyn. And I said, oh, great. How's your business credit? They looked at me so proud and they said, Jonathan, I don't have any business credit. I have no debt. And, most of you would think, great, no debt. But before you give someone $500,000, you want to make sure they're going to pay some of it back. So it's so important. Just like personally, you're building your personal credit, you're doing the same, and you're building your business credit. And business credit cards get reported to Dun & Bradstreet. So I've had clients throughout the decade plus I've been here that start with a $2,000 credit card. 4 years later, they get a line of credit for $40,000. Fast forward a few years, and they're buying their own space that costs $800,000. So start small, get a business credit card. You use it, pay it on time. If you don't have any interest, get a no-fee credit card, and that way you can start building your credit. That way, when you're ready, you can take that next step. Nobling mentioned, can you share some useful tools for cash management? Yeah, a couple of them were just how to hold your money longer. And, right, so you want to get paid as quick as you can, and you want to pay out slowly. I'm going to continue to go over a few more resources as well. And one is our cash flow monitor, which is really what we're going over in terms of managing it appropriately. But some useful things is, right, if you can accept credit cards, it gets you paid quicker. If you can get wires, quicker. And then negotiate with your vendors if you have them. Whether the lady was talking about coffee, right? That was a great question. Your vendors often, I think it was Sandra mentioned, right? Coffee, like you can buy in bulk. Oftentimes, people don't know this, IKEA, Home Depot, they're vendors. So if you can negotiate with different vendors on the business side, you can often get better terms and more negotiating. And if it means getting your money a little quicker, it sometimes pays to offer discounts for getting paid early. Because if it's tens of thousands of dollars, money in your account is worth it. And there's even a calculation you can do, and let me see if I don't think my calculator will show, but say you make $1 million a year in your business, okay? So if you do $1 million divided by 365 days, that's $2,739. So every day your money is being held, right? That's $2,739 almost dollars per day that's going to cost you in essence. So again, that's a whole different series I can talk about, but the key is the quicker you get paid, the quicker you can get your money to work. All right, so I'm going to go through this, and obviously I'll pause for questions. Fantastic questions right now. So I think in the chat, I think it was Novelang asked, what are some tools? Well, great question. First, find the right software. So find a software tool that gives you access to cash flow forecast. If you're looking at me like, I hate numbers, I don't want to do it, A, it's not as hard as you think, but B, you can find a good accountant or bookkeeper that might be able to really help you with it or give you different formatting. So we have it internally. A lot of banks have it, but if not, I always tell business owners, there's 3 things every business should have: a good business banker and a good CPA or bookkeeper. Okay, those are so important for you. And as you grow, a good lawyer as well. They'll help you. Next step, set your time frame. Are we looking at 3 months, 6 months, a year from now? So as you gather that, that's going to be very important for you to know your next steps. And then what revenue do you expect to bring in each month, right? Then you can map out your expected sales for each month of the year. Using a similar example to my own, where we're able to see that bakery, they knew how their summer months looked. They could start plugging and playing and knowing, hey, we're going to have a cash surplus, so I can start investing more in my business. Project the inflows, what's going in, so the sales for those clients who paid you. Projecting cash out, so your fixed expenses such as new equipment, purchases, hiring more staff, rent, etc. Right? So let you create the formula to add it for each month, and the difference shows you the monthly cash, which is in your hand. So pretty much it's money coming in minus money coming out is your cash. And then you set a minimum balance. So this is how much you need to have on hand, how much money you need to run your business. All right, let me keep going here. So we'll just recap high level, right? Determining the overall health of your business. So your financial health of your business is dependent on cash flow. Now, this is probably a little more than I probably could get into, but you're even going to look at, banks look at cash flow. So for every dollar you borrow, the banks like to see you're making $1.25 of net profit. So for example, if you're a business borrowing $100,000 after expenses and everything, we want to know you could pay that $100,000 and then actually you're generating $125,000, because banks don't want your farm equipment, your coffee beans, your healthcare stuff. They just want to make sure they're getting paid. So your ability to get paid quick, and the stronger your business is, the more free cash it's generating, the more you can invest to grow your business. Whereas if you're cash flow negative, you're going to slowly find that you're training yourself. So really looking for lines of credit, which are money that is available. We will usually give you roughly 10% of total sales for a line of credit. So for example, and everything's different, if you're a business that makes $500,000, often we'll see a line of credit for $50,000. I've had businesses who do $500,000 say, we only want 10. That might not be enough for you. In fact, bankers will sometimes come back and say, we want to make sure it's the right amount. But vice versa, if your business does $500,000 in sales a year and you want a line of credit for $1 million, you probably won't get that. So it has to be the right fit, and 10% is usually a good rule of thumb. And I had clients a lot when I was in New York, especially restaurant owners during COVID. All of a sudden, their business wasn't making money, and they were nervous. They're trying to get a line of credit. Well, I always say the best time to replace a leaky roof is on a sunny day. When your business is doing well, that's when you want to make sure you shore up money for emergencies or for growth. So while you're doing well and you're making more, you're probably going to invest more in your business. That's when you want to start thinking about, all right, I know I'm growing, I'm doing great. That's actually when you want to look at financing. And that's when you want to get with a good CPA or bookkeeper to let them know, hey, look, I'm looking to grow my business. I want to show the banks that I want to borrow. And when they know that what that means is they're making sure that when you do your taxes, you're showing profit, which will enable you, because banks have to look at your numbers. And if it's strong numbers, you're more likely to get lending or lending opportunities. So often I'll see people say, well, I made a lot of money, but on paper I'm losing money. Well, banks have to look at what you're showing. So two things, letting your bookkeeper or CPA know. And the second is treat your banker wherever you bank as your partner. So often I'll have clients say, I don't know who my banker is. That's sad. That's their job to be there as your advocate and to help you take your business to the next level. So make sure if you don't know them, spend time to get to know them and share your goals. I had a business, an upholstery business. So they made like the chairs and the couches for a lot of business owners. And they wanted to buy their space they worked out of. And they'd been there for about 15 years. The person who owned the building was selling it, and they wanted to buy it. And when I looked at their numbers, they didn't have enough saved up for a down payment. It was roughly $800,000 the building. They only had about $5,000 saved up. So over the course of the next 18 months, we worked together to help them build their down payment, which was roughly 10%. So they had to get to 80,000, but a little bit more too, because when you buy a place, you gotta, remodel. So they saved $100,000, and it took them a while. But had they just applied for it, they would have got declined. So they actually did two things. They saved up, which was not easy, and they got with their accountant to make sure they knew they were buying a space, so they made the numbers look as strong as possible. And really proud to say they have a beautiful place now in Brooklyn that's their own, and they can pass it on to future generations. I actually do a whole course on buying commercial real estate and equity, and often it's cheaper to buy a place than rent in some markets. So point being, get with your board of directors, whether that's a mentor, your banker, your CPA, the SBDC, which Temple is amazing. Make sure they know about your plans so that it can put you in a stronger position. And maintaining a healthy cash flow ensures that it's available when needed. I do see more questions, so let's see. Since I'm getting close to the end, I'll open up at the very end, but I'll make sure to answer those. So thank you all for it. All right, before I keep going, I'm going to share a couple QR codes. One is the Center for Business Empowerment on the left. You can take your phone, you can scan it, and what this will enable you to do is see some amazing free resources, strategies for your business, as well as industry insights, no cost. You just scan it, you're brought to a link, and you can see how to start your business. This is also for businesses 50 million and above, different articles. It's absolutely amazing. How to build your business plan, which I see as one of the biggest ones, and many more. So that's our Center for Business Empowerment. In the middle, I see Better Money Habits. So this is personally how to build different health, different videos you can watch, which is really, really cool. And then on the right, we also have different learnings that you can do. So we have different webinars on Bank of America that myself and Team of 11 lead with different events from the Academy, as well as other tools and resources, building business credit, Capital 101, and many more. All right. So I want to just thank you all today. I also sent Taya a link with my QR code and resources. We have a few, and I know people asked about the Access to Capital connector, so I'll start pulling that up. But before I answer questions, Taya, anything you'd like to say before we open up to Q&A?
Yes, thank you, Jonathan, for presenting. While you guys are posting any additional questions that you may have in the Q&A and chat box, I will be adding a link to a survey for this webinar. It's a quick survey, about 3 questions. It's required by our funders to get your feedback so we can continue to provide no-cost webinars. So we do encourage you to post that and to take the survey, and then we will also be sending out the follow-up email within 2 to 3 business days with the recording, slide deck, and Jonathan's information. That way you can continue with services. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Well, I'll open up to questions, and I'll also share my screen here. Let's see if I can also, let me pull this one up. Hopefully you all can see this. This is one of the programs. I'll put in the chat. It's an Access to Capital connector. And what it is we've sourced 150 different institutions that are enabling you to help you with getting the money you need, even if you're a startup. It's just three parts. It's easy. One is just to review the information. You fill out a short application. I did it to test it out. It took me 8 minutes. And you're able to connect with a partner on the loan application that you've chosen. And pretty straightforward. Let me put that link in the chat. And then, hey, are you able to share my QR code that I sent out as well? I know a lot of people ask about that as well for next steps.
Yes, I'll add the QR code in the chat now.
You're awesome. Thanks for that. All right, let me start answering some of the questions we have. And I do want to say for all, I want to drop, thank you for your time. Hopefully you took away a few things. Main thing is, make sure that you know how you can manage your payables. You can be the strongest company in the world, but if you're not receiving your money on time, that's going to really hurt you and your business. So make sure you're taking that time, investing in you so you can take those next steps. All right, let me share my screen here, and then I will answer questions we may have, so you all can see this. Okay, let's see what we got. How would you suggest getting a business credit card if your main business is farming and your accountant uses many deductions possible with taxes, but you have a negative income on your taxes years, and it makes it difficult to explain the debt to income ratio? I want to start a side business, only get paid 2 times a year. Great question. So in terms of the business credit card, because you are the borrower to it, you're the guarantor, it's not going to be as difficult as like a line of credit or a term loan or equipment loan. It's going to mostly look at you personally, how is your credit, and then you would put in your income as well. So it would look at the business income, you personally, and your personal credit mostly. So even if your accountant is doing a lot of deductions, the banker is going to ask you what what your sales are. So based on what you put in, that's going to enable you to apply for it. So they're not asking for tax returns typically for a business credit card. So if you're like, yep, business makes 80,000, or I make 80,000, they put that in. If credit's good, hopefully you get approved and you start building your business credit. Now, to that point, and for everyone on, it's exactly right, where you all as business owners, you want to pay as little as you can often in taxes. But that's why when you're looking to apply for like a larger loan, you want to make sure your accountant knows that, because they also want to make sure you're showing profitability, because that's what you need. So if you're in growth mode, you want to show growth, because that's what enables you to keep growing, is getting that access to money so you can scale up your business versus using your own cash flow. I'd rather you use money from employees investing in your business versus, right, just keeping it there for use. But credit cards, you can even open your business on day one. I've had hundreds of clients when I was in the banks, in the branches, come in, open their account, and get a business credit card, even with no sales, because it's going to look more at personal income. Great question. Another one, I'm a B of A member, but may close my account because there aren't any branches close to me. I want to have a personal relationship with a banker, and I have to travel almost an hour. Oh, man. Well, I'm glad you let me know. So good news is now we have bankers who, A, are being added, and B, are able to work remote but are dedicated bankers. So if you would like, feel free to either schedule an appointment with me on the left, or the QR code to add me to your contact. What I can do, because I used to manage the team in Philadelphia, I can look up online to see if you're aligned to someone. Otherwise, I can reach out to somebody who can potentially help you remotely and build that relationship, or see, based on your criteria, if there's a new person or a banker closer. So definitely want to see if we can help you there. Great question. For a real estate investor, would the bank leverage the amount against the value of the investment properties? Good question. Typically we'll look at real estate a little bit differently. So when I say owner-occupied commercial real estate, I'm talking about if you're occupying the building, and let's say you're a lawyer or you're a manufacturer making something. But if you're a real estate investor, when it comes to lending on the bank side, we will look at it based on the cash flow of the business. So we don't really look at LTV as much. And often we don't always even include rent. So it can be tougher for a real estate investor to get traditional business loans. There's other loans that we can potentially look at that aren't business-wise, because we don't usually look at rent. We don't really add that back necessarily. So we'll look at what's the business generating. So what I mean is, if you're like a lawyer, you're billing clients, we'll count that. But if you're making all your money from renting it out to people, we don't always include that when it comes to borrowing for your business. We'll look at more cash flow. What are you producing or making? So to answer your question, we'd look at different vehicles, not always through business. There's something called LMA, loan management account, which, like if you're with Merrill, they'll give you options there. But we don't really look at the LTV in the small business space? Great question. All right, hopefully I answered all your questions here today. This is my QR code. Again, feel free to use it. And I really appreciate all your time today. Temple's SBDC does amazing work. I can't speak highly enough about you all. And yeah, I'll turn it back to you to close this out if there's no more questions.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to email sbdc@temple. And then we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you, Jonathan, for presenting.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for investing in yourself.